A man buried alive beneath another tomb, a city still visible beneath the sea, a village burned, but every meal, every tool still waiting where it fell. These aren't myths, they're real places, lost worlds the earth tried to keep buried, but one by one they've begun to surface, and tonight we're unearthing 7 of them. This is Riddle Me This Mysteries, where the past doesn't stay buried for long. A general's tomb was supposed to hold one body. It held 2. They were excavating what was believed to be just another royal mound, tomb number 120 in Gyeongju, the ancient capital of the Silla kingdom. For years, archaeologists had mapped its chambers, certain it belonged to a 5th century CE general. Then, beneath its foundation stones, the ground sounded hollow. Another structure lay hidden below, smaller, older, sealed so tightly that even moisture hadn't entered for 16 centuries. Inside this lower tomb, later named Hwangnam-dong Wooden Chamber Number 1, they found the unthinkable, the twisted remains of a man wedged into a space barely 3 square meters wide. His legs were forced outward in an unnatural O shape, bones pressed against the walls, armor stacked beneath him. The order made no practical sense. The weapons and horse gear were buried first, the body afterward, as if he'd been pushed in when no space was left. Around his skull lay fragments of a gold-bronze crown, thin plates cut in open-work triangles that caught the light like flames. A single gold earring glinted near the head of another skeleton, perhaps a subordinate who shared the same suffocating grave. Both had been sealed beside the relics of a commander, whose own bones had long since turned to dust. What the archaeologists realized next reframed a belief once thought symbolic. Ancient chronicles mention Sunjang, the ritual burial of attendants alive to serve their masters in death. Historians debated whether it truly happened, but here, in this cramped pit beneath another man's tomb, was physical proof. The layering of armor before flesh, the forced posture, all pointed to one truth. This was loyalty taken to the edge of cruelty. Wooden Chamber Number 1 predates the general's mound above it by nearly a century, marking a transition in Silla's burial architecture. Its low oval mound, 10 meters long and ringed by a faint stone border, bridges 2 eras, the early wooden chamber graves and the later monumental stone mounds that dominate Gyeongju's skyline. Beneath the soil, history isn't layered neatly. One age literally presses down upon another. Among the 165 artifacts recovered were a ring pommel sword, pottery vessels, and the only known leather horse armor from Silla, far lighter than the iron suits found elsewhere, likely ceremonial, reserved for a mounted elite. Together they speak of a warrior class certain that death itself could be commanded. Yet the image of that man, bent and buried beneath another's glory, lingers longer than the relics. His death came just before Silla outlawed live burial in 502 CE, a final echo of a belief fading into reform. The tomb's position, pressed under the general's grander mound, may even mark a shift in dynasties, one elite literally building over another. When they cleared the soil above him, they realized his chamber wasn't alone. Beneath the general's mound, others lay sealed in silence, 6 tombs layered in time, each a voice from a vanished order. One royal grave had hidden 6 others. How many more sleep beneath Gyeongju's hills, buried under centuries of stone and silence? One man entombed beneath another, but what happens when an entire sanctuary is swallowed by the earth itself? An oracle that spoke through the earth, until the earth took her voice back. High on the fractured slopes of Mount Parnassus, the sanctuary of Delphi once gleamed in color and bronze. Pilgrims climbed its terraces to ask questions of a woman who breathed prophecy through a crack in the mountain. But the same fault that gave her voice would, in time, swallow it. Archaeologists have long known that Delphi stands on a living wound of the earth. Each tremor that shook the slopes brought ruin and renewal. Temples collapsed, were buried, then rebuilt atop their shattered foundations. What survives today is only the last layer of a sanctuary that rose again and again from its own debris. Beneath the classical temple of Apollo, seismic mapping reveals the outlines of older shrines, sealed chambers, and terraces buried under landslide clay. Some still hold votive offerings, figurines, bowls, fragments of inscriptions, sealed away like words that were never meant to be heard again. Yet the mountain once spoke in many tongues. North of the main sanctuary, archaeologists have traced ancient terraces and altars that may belong to an earlier cult of the sun, centuries before Apollo claimed the oracle. Before the god of light was worshipped here, Delphi may have served light itself. Ancient writers described vapors rising from a fissure beneath Apollo's temple, carrying the god's words through the breath of the Pythia. Modern science has found traces of ethylene gas seeping from the same fault. Sweet, intoxicating, capable of inducing trance. The earth quite literally spoke, but the same forces that inspired faith also destroyed it. In 373 BCE, an earthquake tore through the sanctuary, collapsing the temple and silting the lower terraces beneath tons of rock. A later quake in the Roman era buried what little remained. The voice of the earth was silenced by the earth itself. When the French school began digging here in the 1890s, they uncovered only pale fragments of marble, the ghost of the once brilliant temple. But modern pigment analysis revealed what the centuries had hidden. The pediments were not white, but painted in vivid reds and blues, traces of gold still clinging to carved folds of stone. Burial, paradoxically, had preserved the color. A sanctuary that lost its light, yet kept its brightness sealed in darkness. Today, lasers and seismic sensors peer below the ruins, tracing buried porticos and retaining walls that once held the crowds of pilgrims. Beneath every stone platform, another waits. The ground that once answered questions now guards them. Each quake that toppled Delphi protected a piece of it, folding one generation's devotion beneath the next. The earth, once an oracle, has become the archive. The oracles fell silent, their voices sealed beneath the mountain. But in another land, silence came differently, not by earth, but by fire. When the fire came, it didn't roar. It whispered through empty corridors, through painted chambers and fallen beams, through the heart of a palace that had already begun to forget itself. Long before its ruin, Knossos was the pulse of the Aegean, Europe's first great civilization, the Minoans. Here, in a maze of staircases and storerooms, a people who knew neither walls nor war built a city of light. They charted the sun, measured months with a 12-part solar calendar, and filled their walls with color. Dolphins leaping, bull leapers twisting in mid-air, processions frozen in ochre and blue. Even beneath the palace's marble foundations, archaeologists found traces of older life. Carbonized grains of emmer wheat, 9,000 years old, proof that this ground had been sacred long before kings and artisans laid its stones. Time piled here, not in centuries, but in civilizations. Then, sometime around 1450 BCE, silence. Storerooms burst into flame, the plastered ceilings collapsed. In one corridor, fresco fragments fused to blackened walls. The great halls were not sacked, they were simply abandoned. No weapons, no siege, no mass graves. The people of Knossos just walked away. For a century, scholars blamed the volcano on Santorini, Thera, which erupted 100 years earlier, raining ash and sea storms upon the islands. But new evidence tells a slower, stranger story. Quakes, fires, rebuildings, and one final blaze that seems deliberate. Charcoal traces show intense, localized burning, as if rooms were set alight in ritual rather than rage. A civilization so ordered, ending in fire, but not chaos. They had measured time by the sun, yet the flames that ended them came from the sea. The island that once shone became a dark mirror of its own myth. Later, Greeks would remember a labyrinth, a king who fed a monster beneath his palace. But the truth may be more human and more haunting. A world that mastered architecture, trade, and art, yet could not master the shifting earth beneath its feet. When Sir Arthur Evans uncovered these ruins in 1900, he found not a palace of myth, but a city still warm with detail. Staircases polished by ancient sandals, amphorae still sealed with oil, wall paint still clinging where the fire hadn't reached. What the flames spared, time restored in silence. And today, under scaffolds and sunlight, Knossos rises once more. A new restoration project reimagines its halls for modern visitors, corridors repainted, columns lifted again toward the Cretan sky. Tourists walk where priests once danced, tracing footsteps over the ashes of an empire that refused to die. A palace that measured time, ended in fire, and now lives again in stone and memory. They called it the Labyrinth, not for what it hid, but for what it remembered. Where Crete ended in fire, Egypt begins in water, a city swallowed by the sea yet never forgotten. When the sea came, it didn't rage. It hushed, rising through the reeds and marketplaces, through courtyards where bronze lamps once burned and priests traced circles of incense in the air. This was Canopus, Egypt's city of healing, where pilgrims from every shore came to bathe in the waters of Serapis in the last centuries before Rome ruled the Nile. At dusk, the harbor shimmered like a mirror of the sky. Oil lamps floated on the water like constellations, and songs drifted from the temple steps, prayers to a deity who promised that water itself could wash away illness, sorrow, sin. For centuries, the city thrived on faith and tide, its walls breathing with the rhythm of the delta. But the earth beneath it was never still. The Nile shifted its course. Tremors rippled through the marshes. Each century the sea crept closer, not in one great storm, but in slow, patient silence. The people rebuilt their docks, raised their homes, prayed harder. Still the horizon moved inland. By the 6th century CE, the chants had stopped. The sea had answered every prayer. For more than 1,000 years, Canopus slept beneath silt and salt. Fishermen spoke of lights in the depths, of statues glimpsed through green water, faces turned upward toward a sun they'd never see again. Then, divers found them, temples lying where the sea had left them, columns half-buried, hieroglyphs veiled in sand, a city still holding its breath. In August 2025, archaeologists raised new wonders from Abu Qir Bay, a quartzite sphinx of Ramesses II, its smile unbroken after 2 millennia, a granite priest statue, and a Roman-era marble figure, reminders that Canopus once bridged pharaohs and emperors alike. Scans revealed docks, canals, and reservoirs, proof that the city had been engineered to live with the water that would one day consume it. Sediment layers show Canopus didn't fall in one night. It drowned, again and again, each flood leaving a thin scar of clay and memory. Today, its treasures rise once more in Alexandria's Secrets of the Sunken City exhibition. Gold amulets, ritual vessels, jewelry burnished by time and salt. The sanctuary that once healed the sick now heals something else. The distance between what was lost and what we still remember. Perhaps the people of Canopus never feared the sea. Perhaps they trusted it, believed that if they built close enough, prayed deep enough, the water would remember them. And it did. The sea that took their city kept it perfectly preserved, every column, every breath, sealed beneath the waves. The sea kept its silence, but far to the north, fire was waiting to speak again. When archaeologists opened the peat, they didn't find bones or ruins. They found a fire still burning, 3,000 years old. Around 850 BCE, in the wetlands of what is now Cambridgeshire, a small Bronze Age village stood on wooden stilts above a slow river shimmering with reeds and dragonflies. Inside the roundhouses, pots simmered, looms creaked, beads caught the light. A world balanced between fire and water. And then the balance broke. The flames came quietly at first, sparks on thatch, smoke in rafters. When the beams caught, the whole village burned in minutes. Walkways blazed, roofs collapsed, and the houses, still glowing, fell into the river below. Where the fire ended, the water began. Mud swallowed everything. Pottery still full of food, tools on floors, a wooden wheel, footprints pressed into clay. The villagers fled or watched helplessly from the banks as their world dissolved into steam. No one knows how the blaze began, accident, attack, or some final rite of cleansing, but the fire spared nothing. For nearly 3,000 years, the fens kept their secret. The fire's heat sealed the timber, the river's mud sealed the past. When the first excavations began in the 2010s, they uncovered not ruins but an entire moment in time. A village paused mid-life, as if the people had stepped out for breath. Charred beams still smelled faintly of smoke. A wheel lay beside a child's bracelet. Bowls held grains and stew, preserved in the instant before the flames reached them. Even textiles survived, linen so fine it could rival silk, and glass beads traced trade routes stretching to Iran and the Mediterranean. A Bronze Age world, far more connected and fragile than anyone had imagined. The 2024 Cambridge Archaeological Unit report revealed the settlement may have lasted less than a year before it burned, perhaps just 9 months between construction and catastrophe. A single summer, frozen forever. Now the story continues. In 2025, new funding was announced to bring Must Farms finds to the public at the Peterborough Museum and Art Gallery, where its pots, tools and fabrics will stand in glass cases, still shining with river silt. Visitors will walk through digital reconstructions, across the same wooden causeways, beneath the same thatched roofs, hearing echoes of that single vanished night. Archaeologists call it Britain's Pompeii, but unlike the Italian city entombed in ash, this one was preserved by its own reflection: fire above, water below. It reminds us how civilization can vanish not through conquest, but through contradiction, a spark meeting a river. The flames that ended Farm left behind something rarer than survival, a memory still warm enough to touch. And beyond the smoke, another mystery waits, carved not in fire or water, but in stone. High in the mountains of northwest Iran, an ancient lake shimmers inside a volcanic bowl. Its surface is pale green, its heart hot with gas, the breath of the earth itself. Here, 20 centuries ago, the Sasanian kings built their greatest sanctuary, Takht-e Soleyman, the throne of Solomon, though it was older still. Beneath its flagstones lie the bones of older empires. Magnetometry now reveals Median-era foundations, traces of an even earlier fire shrine. For more than 1,000 years, people climbed this crater to tend a flame that could never be allowed to die. They called it Adur-Gushnasp, the fire of warriors. Zoroastrian priests fed it with pure oil and dry tamarisk. Kings rode here to swear oaths before its light, believing that the empire's fate burned within the same flame. But the temple was never only about fire. Behind the altar, a corridor runs toward the lake, a sealed passage recently mapped beneath the ruins. No one yet knows its purpose. Was it a channel for smoke or a ritual way to bring water to the fire? In the faith of Zarathustra, purity was balance, flame and spring, heat and coolness, light and reflection. Perhaps this place joined them all. Under the lake's surface at Takht-e Soleyman, archaeologists working in recent years have reported finds of metal artifacts and charred wood near the fire temple's ledge, hinting that the water might hold yet more secrets. Even today, villagers say that on windless nights, faint blue tongues of gas flicker on the water, the fire breathing through stone. When the armies of the Caliphate came in the 7th century, the priests tried to guard their altar, but the wind shifted. The eternal fire went dark, and its guardians fled. Yet the lake kept its secret. The gases still rise, the water still glows. The world above forgot, but beneath the surface, something continues to burn. Now archaeologists walk its terraces again, tracing the layers of Median, Achaemenid, Parthian, Sasanian stone. Each civilization built on the promise that the light would never fail. And though the temple stands in ruins, its symmetry remains perfect. Fire above, fire below, mirrored across a circle of water. A flame that would not die, only descend. And deep beneath this mountain of light, the desert waits, where an entire city once vanished into the sand. A city once stood where the wind forgets its name. They called it Iram of the Pillars, a city built to defy the desert and devoured by it. In the old verses, it was the pride of the tribe of Ad, a place whose towers reached the clouds, whose merchants scented the world with frankincense. Then, the stories say, arrogance rose higher than the pillars themselves, and the Lord sent a storm that buried it for eternity. For centuries, Iram belonged to poets and preachers. No map marked it, no ruin bore its name. Until one winter night in 1992, a NASA satellite passing over Oman caught faint scars beneath the dunes, lines that should not have been there. From orbit, they looked like veins of shadow, a crossroads carved by caravans long vanished. Archaeologists followed them south, across a wilderness where compasses faltered to a limestone plateau called Shisr. There, wind had stripped the sand to its bones. A pit yawned where the earth had collapsed into itself, a sinkhole wide as a coliseum. Around it lay the ghosts of architecture, plastered walls, the bases of 8 towers, the broken mouths of water cisterns. Bronze coins glinted in the dust. Fragments of incense burners still smelled faintly of resin when warmed by the sun. It was enough to make headlines. The lost city of Ubar found. But the truth, as always, was stranger. Beneath the ruins, geologists found limestone dissolved by centuries of hidden water. The city had not been cursed, it had been undermined. When the ground finally gave way, the towers slid into the void and the survivors fled. The desert erased their footprints within a season, leaving only legend to fill the silence. In recent years, new surveys across Oman and southern Jordan have begun to redraw the map of Arabia's lost cities. LIDAR and satellite imaging revealed more ancient towers scattered beyond Shisr, while excavations near Wadi Rum uncovered inscriptions that may reference the ancient people of Ad, the very tribe said to have built Iram, the city of the pillars. Archaeologists date the rise of these desert settlements to around 2800 to 300 BCE, when trade in frankincense and myrrh linked southern Arabia to Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. If Iram existed, it likely flourished during the first millennium BCE, at the height of the incense trade, a time when caravans crossed thousands of kilometers between Oman's ports and Petra's red canyons. Pottery from Yemen, Nabatean coins from Petra, and caravan routes etched into satellite imagery suggest Iram was never one city at all, but a network, a chain of fortified oases along the incense road. A civilization held together by sand, trade, and faith, and undone by them all. Maybe that is why the myth endures. The Quran calls it punishment, science calls it collapse, but both speak of the same truth, that pride and stone left long enough turn to dust together. Today the desert still hides its secrets. At dusk, when the wind moves across Shizr, the dunes form brief shapes, angles that could be pillars, shadows that could be walls. From orbit, a mirage flickers on the screens of satellites, a memory written in wind and light, waiting for the sands to part again. 7 riddles, 7 worlds buried by time, in fire, in water, in sand. Each ruin speaks if you know how to listen. A city that burned, another that drowned, one swallowed by the desert's breath. But none are truly gone. If one of them still lingers in your mind, let it travel. Like the video. Subscribe if you haven't. Share the silence. The story continues, only here on Riddle Me This Mysteries.